We are going to get started. Welcome to the Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy's January Lunch and Learn. Today we're going to be focused on career paths for peer and family support. This is a lunch and learn that has been requested lots of times. We get lots of questions on kind of what the process is to become a peer support specialist and family support specialist. But okay, I'm credentialed. Now what? And making sure that you keep up to date with your credential. So hopefully this will answer some questions, maybe expand your horizons a little bit about what else you can do in our amazing field. I am Haley Winterberg. I am the executive director here at PFCA. I'd love for you guys to post in the chat your name, your title if you're working somewhere, what organization if you're working somewhere. And our icebreaker question of the day is, what professional goal do you have? I have a professional goal is I want to run for office one day. I don't think that's anytime soon, but eventually I think we can make some real change with the laws regarding behavioral health and wellness. And so that's where I'd like to make a big difference in the future. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Helps us know who's here and who's joining us. Some Zoom basics. We have, make sure you are on mute unless you have a question. Then I ask that you raise your hand. We'll have time for open questions at the end. Video is great. I love to see faces, but I also know it's a lunch and learn. So feel free, and it's right at lunchtime. If you want to stuff your face right now, it is a perfect time to do so. Go for it. No shame here. Some that joined a little bit earlier got to watch me eat a pizza really quickly, so all for it. And feel free to use the chat box all throughout this lunch and learn today. Would love to connect with each of you that way as well, and feel free to post any questions you have there. So I'd be wondering, okay, I know some of you are familiar faces, some are new names that I'm not as familiar with. And so this Lunch and Learn is hosted by the Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy. Our mission is to inspire recovery and wellness through professional development and continuing education to equip emerging leaders and strengthen our peer and family workforce here in Arizona. Really, all of that to say is we exist solely to support our peer and family support specialists and the organizations that provide that meaningful service. I also am a peer support, a family support, and went on and got some additional degrees after that, which we'll chat about later. So one of the things that we do is we offer lots of different continuing education courses all throughout the year. Our current trainings are listed here. We have one for supporting and navigating the justice system, self-care, how to understand the impact and how we can support individuals impacted by the opioid use crisis. We've got our abilities, differences, and inclusion on navigating the DDD system. We have a new trauma-informed care course that we launched at the end of last year. We also have a refresher series. So if you are a credentialed peer and family support and you're like, it's been a little while since I took that training. I know, I was like, I want to retake that credentialing training. It's been a while. This is so we don't have to spend 40 plus hours redoing our training, but actually just able to get kind of a refresher so we can connect back to our core of peer and family support. We also have lots of new trainings that we are launching this year. So you'll see that this is a lot more than that previous slide. So we should be offering each of these trainings about 1 to 3 times throughout the year. Some on motivational interviewing, documentation, how to tell our story effectively, different cultural components of it, group facilitation and engagement. So super excited to be expanding this. These new courses were suggested by provider leadership and our workforce. We had some focus groups last year that really helped us create what these training topics would be for this year. So diving right in for our topic, and thanks for everyone who's introducing yourselves in the chat. We've got some great representation here. So we're going to talk about what is peer support. And I know for some of you, this is going to be review, but just bear with me, right? I want to make sure we're all having the same conversation. So peer support in Arizona, it is a credential. It's actually policy of access. So that is our state Medicaid office here. And that policy is AMPM 963. If you're a peer support, I do encourage you to get familiar with AMPM 963. There are a range of different titles for peer support, right? They all have the same credential, but they might have a very different role or even the same role. And so I want to keep that in mind, right? I know when I started this field, I was like, oh, but I'm actually a recovery coach. It's very similar to a peer support. So these are just various titles that we could go by as we're actually looking for jobs too for peer support. So you might want to navigate and looking at these different titles. We've got peer support specialist, recovery navigator, recovery coach, peer recovery support, peer mentor, certified peer specialist. We've got ACTS peer support, which is a specialty, housing peer support, which is a specialty, crisis peer support, which is a specialty. We also have forensic peer support. So there's lots of different options here that do similar roles. So what is this credentialing that I'm talking about? So the access policy determines and provides the oversight for credentialed peer supports. And in order to provide peer support as a service here in Arizona, you do have to meet these qualifications and complete the training. So the qualification is to be a behavioral health paraprofessional, behavioral health technician, behavioral health professional. Each of those has different mile markers for education, for experience in the workforce related to our field, and that's what kind of creates that qualification. And then you also have to self-identify as either an individual who has experience with a mental health condition or substance use, which you've sought support for, and has an experience of sustained recovery to share. So once you meet those qualifications, then you could select a peer support training that is approved by Access. These typically are over 40 hours, and we have over 40 options available within Arizona. So you might be like, that sounds like a lot. How would I know? Access has created a one-pager with a list of the different organizations and phone numbers and websites. And then we at PFCA have actually created an interactive map on our website, azpfca.org/FAQ. And you can narrow that down for peer support training agencies and be able to find one that's in your area. And as I said, this training, it has a lot of components. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I wanted you to be aware, right? It really is providing a initial overview of our system and some things to help people succeed as they're becoming peer supports and delivering services throughout our system. And the first topic is concepts of hope and recovery. This is really, how do we acknowledge our own as well as others' journeys of hope and recovery, and what does that look like? Then it's also advocacy and systems perspective. So having a foundational knowledge of some core things that have happened in our system, social determinants of health, and many others, so we can support in advocating for our members. There's also psychiatric rehabilitation skills and service delivery. So this is preparing you to provide those initial services, and then professional responsibilities as a peer support and self-care in the workplace. So what is it that we absolutely have to do? What laws are we bound by as we work in this field? But also, how do we make sure that we're able to be in this field for a long time through self-care? So the process to becoming a peer support is you have to first meet those qualifications to become credentialed. You have to find the training agency that will best fit your needs. And I encourage everyone to make sure you're considering the schedule, the location. Do they offer any specialty or additional trainings that they offer as a part of their credentialing? And how does that work with you? And make sure you select the best training agency for you. And then you complete that credentialing training, which allows you that opportunity opportunity to begin to search for employment, and hopefully you can obtain employment. And then you have 4 hours of continuing education every year as a peer support specialist. And we hope that that will support you as well as other things for your own growth and development journey. So what does a peer support do? And this is a very kind of basic definition, and pulled this again from the access policy. But there's a lot of things that peer support can do. As someone who has provided peer support in the past, you have one-to-one support in groups and outings and reaching into hospitals or justice facilities, community-based supports. Really about how do we support individuals and effectively utilizing services and navigating our system, but also creating new coping skills and how to engage with the world in a positive way, and supporting in skill development. That could be independent living skills, it could be social skills, lots of different skills that we need to engage with our world. And so I absolutely love these goals as peer support. And there's so many things that we can do within that to support individuals. There's also a lot of different settings, as I'm sure you recognize from the different titles that we have as peer support specialists. There's also different places, and each setting is almost its own version. Peer support looks different in each setting. So you have peer-run organizations where that is the leadership of that organization, and majority of their staff are peer support specialists. That means they have their own lived experience themselves, and many of them also completed the credentialing training. So that is your peer-run organization. Then you also have your integrated health clinics, and we have these all throughout Arizona. And those are where they're providing support to their members with physical health and behavioral health, and maybe they have clinical teams here, or other professionals to wrap around, and peer supports can be involved in that process. We also have community-based services. And so these are organizations that primarily you're providing that support out in the community. When I was a housing peer support specialist, I was at my desk maybe one day a week if I was lucky. I was out there with my members looking for apartments and, getting people set up for moves and making sure that they had what they need to succeed in our community. Then there's also clinical-based services. So those are more focused on your purely behavioral health focused clinics. Maybe don't have the integration, and that looks a little bit different as how peer support operates in those areas. Then there's also health plans as peer support. I don't know if you guys realize, but in the chat, we've got some health plan representatives here. Shout out to Melina, who I used to support in a peer support role as well. And that looks different because you're often doing less one-to-one support, but thinking about peer support as a whole, as a community, and thinking about peer support providers, members that are receiving peer support services, and bringing that lived experience into the health plan. Then we also have community service agencies, and this is a different provider type that we have in Arizona. Sometimes they're peer-run organizations, sometimes they're more clinical, sometimes they're more focused on a community basis, and they also provide a peer support. So lots of different options, right? And I encourage you that I've worked in several of these settings, and sometimes I've been like, you know what, I don't think this is the setting for me. The way that they operate, this doesn't feel like home to me. But for my colleagues, it felt fantastic. And so I had to kind of explore what setting of peer support felt best for me. Where did I operate best in? What structure did I like? How was the leadership? What was my day-to-day duties and responsibilities like? And that's going to be different in each and every one of these settings. So making sure you realize, you don't have to stop being a peer support specialist. If you entered a setting that maybe doesn't feel right, you can explore what other settings there are available to check those out. There's also specialty options. So sometimes within that same setting, you might have a different option. For example, when I worked at a peer-run organization, I supported our youth and young adult program, and I managed that program, and I loved it. And then eventually I was like, I think I want to not hang out with young adults all day, every day. I want to do a little bit something different. And there's also options for housing. That's another area I supported, and crisis and ACT teams. And that's a specialized team working with individuals that need some additional support. support. There's peer supports for integrated health that are supporting and navigating some of those chronic health conditions. So both focused on their physical health as well as their mental health. Our justice system, individuals that are navigating the justice system, either currently or re-entering their community, they also need some additional support. And there's specialty peer support roles for that and programs that exist for peer supports. And there's programs that focus on substance use and our Department of Child Safety and supporting parents and families navigating that system. So there's lots of different options as we look at what specialty. So it's not a one size fits all, but really that you have a expansive array of options to enter into this field and begin to gain employment. So like I said, I've hit a few of these throughout my 16 years in this field, and said, hey, I think I want to start in crisis. And then I was like, you know what? I want to not be out in the field all the time. My poor car is having too many miles on it, right? I'm eating a whole lot of Circle K hot dogs. I want something else. So then I went over to the youth and young adult program, and I also have supported in some crises programs, and there's so many different options that we have available for peer support specialists. But something that's also required in that access policy that not everybody realizes is there's actually supervision requirements because we're not behavioral health professionals, right? We need to have some sort of oversight and ideally support as well as we provide this. And so access policy says, hey, these staff positions are important and we need to make sure that there's supervision. Some of the health plans have then provided some additional requirements for what that looks like. And so one of those is United Healthcare. They say at least 1 hour biweekly of behavioral health professional or behavioral health technician supervision. So anytime you would have a one-to-one meeting with your boss and talk about your goals, overview some of the members you're serving, maybe start talking about the challenges you're facing in service delivery. What other resources could your members benefit from, etc. That would be things that would be part of a supervision of a peer support. Is how do we support you in providing good services to the individuals you're serving, but also your own growth and development. And another requirement that comes from access policy is continuing education. So access policy requires a minimum of 4 hours every year that's specifically relevant to peer support. So that's ongoing training, and 1 hour should be focused on ethics and boundaries. So I don't know if you noticed on our 2023 training list, that's something that we offer, as well as those other 4 hours can also be included within our organization, and we track that in Reliance and all kinds of good stuff for you as peer support specialists. But it is a requirement to have 4 hours of continuing education relevant to peer support. And that's the key words there, is that it has to be relevant to peer support. You can't take a training on underwater basket weaving and not be relevant to peer support, right? It's got to be something that is actually connecting to your job and how do you support your members in your service delivery and your growth. Then we have a similar role, but different, for family support in Arizona. And as in our organization, we're the peer and family, so I want to make sure that we cover this as well. And the access policy that includes all the requirements for our family support in Arizona, that's going to be AMPM 964. Anytime you're looking for an access policy, if you put in AMPM and those numbers, you're going to pull up the peer support of family support policy. And just like peer support, there is a ton of titles for family support. We've got credentialed family support specialist, certified parent peer family support partner. That's a mouthful. I'd hate to have to say that's my title over and over again. Family support, parent support, family mentor, parent partner, and lots of different options are available for a title as well as we're looking at the term of family support. There's some differences with family support to peer support. For Arizona to become peer support and provide peer support services, you have to go through the credentialing process. However, family support is a little bit different. Who knows, maybe one day that will be different, but for right now, there's two different tracks for family support. There's family support as a service, and that can be a service billed by any provider for supporting a family member of a service recipient. So let's say my loved one is enrolled in the behavioral health system, and they're working with their counselor, and I have some questions. There's a release of information on file, and that counselor provides me with some insight and support. They can technically bill family support for that conversation with me. That individual does not have to be credentialed as a family support to provide that family support service. Then we also have credentialed family support. And that is where you have a qualified individual under the access policy guidelines, is that they have lived experience as an adult who is a primary supporter of a child, or the primary supporter of an adult who has experience navigating the adult or child systems of care. So how did I become a family member? Initially, because I had a significant other that was a part of our adult system of care. And now I'm a mother of a kiddo in our behavioral health system. And so those were what made my qualifications happen to enter a training program. So I completed that training program and then was able to bill for family support. And because I completed this training, I got to have a modifier in the code for billing. And I know that some of you are like, I don't know about all that. But that happens sometimes in the back end and you don't even realize it's happening. But if you've completed the credentialing training for family support, Access is able to track that through those modifiers that are only allowed for credentialed family supports. So again, how do you find a training agency? We have two different ways to support you in that process. Access has a one-pager that offers the 3 training agencies that are open to the community for training. And those are some great organizations. We've got Arizona Complete Health, United Healthcare, and University of Arizona. You also can navigate our website on that same interactive map and be able to select family support training agencies and find the training agencies closest to you. And this is similar in that there are required training components of that family support training. So doesn't matter what agency you go to, you know that these are going to be covered in some way, shape, or form in a family support training. And that's going to include things like our Arizona Vision and our 12 principles for children's behavioral health service delivery. It also has a system overview, some laws related to our children's system, all understanding the children's levels of care and what are the covered services. Kiddos actually have more services available to them, navigating the DDD system, and how do we support families? Understanding transition age youth and the different components within that transition time. So once someone becomes a teenager and they're heading into our adult system, how do you support along that process? It's got conflict resolution skills here, and also focusing on wellness and considering things like grief. As we support families, there's going to be some different scenarios and emotions that might come up. And so a credentialing training has to have these components in order to be approved by Access. The process is also similar to a peer support specialist. Is if an individual meets those qualifications to be credentialed, then they would locate a training agency that best fits their needs. Like I said, there's 3 that are open to the community, and each one is different, and they have different scheduling and specialties. They might offer additional trainings. Once you complete that, then opens you up to become eligible for employment for a family support specialist, and then you have the continuing education hours. So what does the family support do? And there's, just like with our peer support, there are different settings for family support specialists as well. So it's not a one-size-fits-all position. Each organization operates differently. So we have family-run organizations. So just like peer-run organizations are led by those that have lived experience, we have family-run organizations that are also led by those with lived experience. I think they're really cool environments to be a part of and engage with those organizations. They operate differently. family because they've been there, done that. They get what you're going through. They get what their members are going through. There's integrated health clinics as well, the community-based services, clinical services, health plans, and community service agencies. And some have, one or two family support specialists, and some, their whole agency is focused on family support. So each of these settings is a little bit different, just like with our peer support. And there's also different specialties for family supports. And this includes the Department of Child Safety. We've got some incredible programs in our state that are connecting families with other families who have successfully navigated the DCS system and obtain their children back. And so being able to support other families with that. There's youth and young adult family support and housing and crisis. Also ACT teams. This is a little bit more limited here in Arizona, but it is something that is increasing more and more across our country. Integrated health family support, to have a family member that's supported in this way at a provider, and it was her favorite position she's been in. I don't think I would have loved it as much working alongside a doctor to provide that family support, but it's something that they found was a perfect fit for them. There's also navigating the justice system as a family support specialist, engaging with families that are experiencing substance use as a part of their family structure, and family support via telehealth as well. So again, lots of different options. And so if you find yourself as a family support specialist and you're like, you know what, I'm not sure that this is the right setting for me, or maybe I need to focus on a different area, that's an option for you. You don't have to leave our field, but you can find a different way to provide that service in a different population or focus area. So the goals of family support are assisting the family to adjust to their loved one's needs and developing skills to effectively interact and guiding them, right? And how do they support and navigating our system? What is effective service utilization, understanding how do we plan for supports? What do our service plans even mean and look like? How can families be involved in that in a meaningful way? But also supporting and developing skills to interact, engage, coping skills. So lots of different options for family support. This is also available in one-to-one or groups. I have a family member who attended a grandparents raising grandchildren group, and they absolutely loved that version of family support. So they're able to connect to other grandparents that were raising kiddos like them. And so being able to know that there's lots of options available and what this looks like. There is also a supervision requirement, just like peer support. Isn't that interesting? They mirror each other often. In the same process for this, one of the health plans has created some actual requirements as to how often that should happen and what is the time, and that is 1 hour biweekly by a behavioral health professional or a behavioral health technician, and that comes from United Healthcare. Many of the other health plans, they say, as is best for that staff member and the organization, and so you might have it once a month, you might have it every week. It's going to depend based on organization if they're not connected with United Healthcare. And so knowing that that supervision is there to support you in your journey as a family support specialist, but also if you're supervising family support. So this is an expectation that's required in access policy, that we are supporting our workforce and how to support their members best and in supporting their own growth and development within our system. And for a family supports, they actually have a minimum continuing education requirement of 8 hours. 8 hours for family support specialists. So peer supports have to do 4 over a year, but family supports need 8 hours. And similar, 1 hour of that needs to be focused on ethics and boundaries. And it has to be relevant to family support. So it can't be on dog grooming, but it's got to be something related to family support, to support in that. How do we provide effective services, continue our growth in our workforce, and make sure that we are doing the best we can by those that we serve. And in this case, for families, United Healthcare has 16 hours required, as well as Mercy Care at this time. So they have some additional training hours requirements if you're billing under those two health plans. So like I said, there are different organization types that you can provide either peer or family support, and there's different specialties. And I wanted to kind of go over, as this Lunch and Learn promised, some potential career paths. And this isn't to say these titles are going to differ by organization and by specialty. And it's not that, someone starts all the way over on one side and ends up in executive leadership, but that's something that's possible. One of the things that happens a lot within our field, which I am so honored to see, is that we often promote within. So as long as you're willing to do the work and you're committed to the work that you're doing and you're doing a good job, you have opportunities within our system. And for many individuals, that starts in that direct service realm and being able to provide that one-on-one group support directly to members. And then what we see from that position is individuals might move into more of a case management role where they're supporting an assigned caseload. And then we have individuals that then move potentially into like a team lead role where they're overseeing a team of their colleagues previously of peer or family support specialists. And then after that role, if they're still interested in continuing on their growth journey, and then we have opportunities for coordinator, supervisor, and manager. So it's overseeing, a program with multiple teams, right, or multiple staff, and making sure that a program is running efficiently from A to Z, making sure you're supporting your staff. Those are the individuals often providing those supervision hours, but they're also making sure the program is operating on budget, and they're making sure members' needs are met in the same way, just not providing always that direct service as much. Then there's another option as well. And some people move into that coordinator supervisor position and then they move into administration. Sometimes they go straight from direct service to a role within administration. It can look different for each person, but that creates options such as human resources and finance and training and billing and being a part of kind of more of those behind the scenes aspects that all of our organizations need to run smoothly and succeed. And that, depending on your specialty, if you are a numbers person, finance, you might love, right? If you like to enter data and manage data, billing is a great opportunity to consider. Or for me, I knew I loved training. And so I found opportunities where I could be a part of training teams within the organizations I worked with, and that included new employee orientations, that included job shadowing, that included lots of different opportunities. I've also supported with human resources and writing the organization's policies and looking at scheduling, looking at many different components that weren't directly providing support one-to-one. I know for me personally, when I was newer in the career and I didn't have as great of boundaries and I didn't have a great work-life balance and I found myself kind of facing burnout, I was able to move into more of an administration role to be able to still provide amazing help and support those without having to provide that direct service. And that was really helpful to me along my journey to be able to say, I can still be a part of this organization and do something meaningful that I'm not burnt out with yet. And then there's an opportunity to move into a director role. And there's different directors. There's directors of operations and clinical directors, which typically requires an additional degree for directors of programs, and lots of different options as we look at that kind of director level as you move through your journey. And then there's also the opportunity for executive leadership. Several of our executives that are running peer and family run organizations, they started right at the bottom, providing that direct service support, right? One of them even started as a file person, and that's all they did was they were there to come in a few days a week to actually manage files. That is all they did. And then they loved the organization and the work they did, and they continued to grow within it. And now they're a CEO of an organization. And so knowing knowing that the sky is the limit with our field, and these are just potential paths. It doesn't have to be the same for everyone. And sometimes you might go into a manager position, then you're like, you know what, this was a little bit much. I want to go back to direct service. I know I've done that from time to time and kind of moved in different areas of this field. And there's different options. This is what I love about it is, we have an abundance of options. That's really what I should call this. But you can change that specialty focus. You can shift what provider type you're working at. You can apply to work at one of the health plans, and there's different roles within the health plans that peer and family supports can do really well in and provide their expertise and still support members. There's also a special office, both the access level as well as all of our health plans have, and it's called the Office of Individual and Family Affairs. And they often are overseeing and providing support related to peer and family support. There's lots of lived experience in those offices. We've got some representation on this call today. I've been a part of those offices, and I will tell you it's by far one of my most favorite teams to be a part of. And then there's also the Office of Human Rights, where if you've got that advocate spirit, this can be a great place to be and utilize your lived experience to support people and ensuring their rights are available to them and that organizations aren't impeding upon a member's rights. You also have the opportunity to obtain more professional degrees and looking at, do you want to become a licensed counselor? Do you want a degree in business? Do you want a social work degree, which provides you more options? Yeah, I see Robert. He says thumbs up to the social work degree. But continuing your education. So the credentialing training is a great starting point, and you can continue on from there. And that will open you up to a lot of different positions within our field. You also can move into consulting and program development. This is something I actually started early on in my career, and creating programs that are meaningful and then supporting more of a training role. So continue the journey. It doesn't have to be one that ends. You have to do continuing education trainings. You have to. I think PFCA is the best for that, but there's lots of other options as well. You can obtain those higher education college degrees, but continue to build your skills as well, right? If you've got a coworker or a colleague or a supervisor who's really good at something, connecting with them and being like, hey, I really want to learn how you do that. You lead an amazing group. You mind telling me what your process is? Can I shadow you? Can we do that together? So that way you're building up your own skills throughout the process. I know sometimes that helps me even more so than formal training. If I'm a hands-on learner, that's just who I am. And so being able to be side by side with someone and have them teach me that skill, and we do that together, that was really helpful for me in my own journey of development. Another thing is be the person for the job you want, right? If you want one day to be at that executive level, or you want to be a manager, you gotta start acting like it. I hate to be that bearer of bad news, right? But we've gotta be the person for that job that we want. Dress for success. I'm not gonna likely promote somebody to be a senior manager if they're showing up in holey jeans and a tank top and they're late all the time. We might have some different thought processes of how would that person represent our organization? How would they be looked at from their peers? Would they be looked at as seen as someone who can lead them and mentor them to the next level? So thinking about that, but also dressing for your day, right? You don't want to support members in a 5-piece suit. That's not going to connect very well. So being mindful about it, right? And, how are we dressing? How are we being portrayed? How are we engaging with ourselves? If you're dropping the F-bomb every word you say, that's also probably not leaving a good impression. And being dependable. Showing up on time. When you say you're going to meet with a member at Monday at 9 a.m., being there Monday at 9 a.m. If there is a meeting within your organization, that you are there, that they know they can count on you, that you're completing your billing on time. I know that's hard. I know. I've been there. It's hard. But actually being dependable in that way, having conversations of, I'm behind in my billing, this happened, this is my plan to fix it. That's a part of being dependable and accountable. thinking about what you're going to do before you do it. It seems like common sense, I know, but the number of times I had conversation with staff I've provided supervision to over the years, but I just didn't even think about it. I was like, what? What do you mean you didn't stop and think, right? And, it's okay to pause. It's okay to say, you know what, I've got to think about that first before you answer. Remember, before you answer your supervisor, but give yourself that time to think and then figure out what's your best course of action. Ensuring you have the appropriate boundaries, that you're not hanging out with members after hours, right? That you are having good boundaries with your coworkers, that you're not oversharing and they know your whole life story. That's not always necessarily a good thing either. You can connect with your coworkers while still ensuring there's some boundaries there, right? Making sure we're following our ethics and policies. I mentioned access policy a lot today, but each of your organizations have policies. When I looked at people to promote, it was those that I knew were going and they knew what was the expectation, and I could count on them to act the best way for our organization, for our members at that time. And then also find an organization and a job that make you happy. Right? I've mentioned options over and over and over and over again here in this training, but that's because really we have so many options available to us that if you're not happy in your current role and you've tried to advocate for yourself with your supervisors, you've had conversations to maybe find a remedy and that's not happening, then maybe it's time to look at where might I fit best? Where are my skills more aligned? Where do I want to go? What organization aligns with my personal values? So I'm going to share a little bit about my journey throughout this process. So as you see up at the top, that is me as a teenager already doing some work in this field and doing some public speaking. And then we've got my headshot from last year. So I started doing this work through informal peer support. And I was supporting a youth program, actually helped co-found that program. And we moved that program. It grew so well that it started to go into other states, and I supported in that process. At first, I was paid in Target gift cards. No lie, Target gift cards. It was an experience, to say the least. And then I started to become paid across our country to share my story and my story of recovery and my story of hope and how I got there, and be able to motivate others and help professionals as they were supporting other young people. And that led me into a consulting role where I supported in trainings and I supported in audit reviews. That part wasn't as fun, I will tell you. But I also got to support in developing new programs for youth and young people and individuals with their own behavioral health journey. And that was an exciting role for me. And then I finally turned 21, and at the time you could not provide billable service unless you were 21. Then I was finally able to complete the peer support training and become a certified peer support specialist. And that led me into some specialties of housing and youth. So that's where I spent most of my time as a peer support specialist. And then as I was in a peer support role and leading a youth and young adult program, I went on and I finished my bachelor's degree in human services. That led me to become a manager. And then I started to say, you know what, I want to dabble in crisis a little bit. So I did some volunteer work for some crisis organizations. I did not want that to be my full-time job. But it was something that I was really, I want to know, how did crisis work? I wanted to increase my skills of de-escalation, and that really supported me in that journey. And then I went on and got my master's degree, which led me into more of that leadership roles. And I moved into working with a health plan. And I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun. I had a really great team. I was very lucky. But that gave me an opportunity to not just advocate for an individual member, but to advocate for thousands of members, and to make sure behavioral health was on the mindset and recovery was on our mindset as an entire health plan, and how do we build recovery as a part of policies and so many other things. And that was an exciting journey for me. And then that led me to leaving the health plan and to my role today at that executive level. And I will tell you, when I saw this position, I had kind of joked with a colleague about it, and I was like, no, I'm not qualified enough. And he's like, no, you are. You should apply. You should go for it. I was like, I don't know. He helped me redo my resume even. Was like, I believe in you. You can do this. So I threw my hat in the ring and accepted the job at 9 months pregnant. It was wild. I started September 1st of 2021, and I had my baby September 19th. It was an experience, to say the least. But I was so passionate about being able to support our peer and family support and having a journey similar to mine and creating their own path, right? And how do we grow together in this field and make a difference with those that we serve? Is, there's great power in that one-to-one, but I also knew, as I was providing that direct service, there was a lot of areas I needed training and support in that my organization couldn't provide, or that my coworkers didn't even know. So being able to be that place and an organization focused on supporting, that makes my heart happy. I've been here over a year now, and I love it every single day. So I ultimately found, I think, the place for me for right now. And if you're on your journey, maybe you're still searching for a job, or maybe you're like, you know what, I'm not in the right place for me right now, right? I want to explore what some of those options are. We actually advertise for select organizations, their open positions on our website. And so you can go to our website and check that out and see what other options. One of the things I'm committed to, and you'll see on those job postings, is it's not only peer and family support positions, but if they're hiring a receptionist, I'm going to include that. If they're hiring a clinician, I want to include that, because there's nothing stopping you guys from going on and getting those degrees and being able to qualify and do amazingly well in those roles. I think peer and family support specialists, we should be at every level of our system in every position possible, so we can lead by example and use our stories of hope and recovery for others throughout an organization. I want to invite you to join us for some upcoming courses and events that we have. So we have a self-care course happening on Wednesday, January 18th. We have our trauma-informed care real-world techniques on January 23rd from 1 to 5. We also are going to be down in Tucson. I don't know if any of you are down in Tucson, but we'll be down there on January 27th. From 5 to 7 at Culinary Dropout. I'm super excited to drive down to Tucson, some good food, and hopefully can connect with some amazing peer and family supports down there. We also have 2 of our core courses that we're offering. On January 20th, we are doing our opioid use crisis course. And then on January 25th, we have our forensic peer support course available. Woohoo! It's raffle time. And so I'm going to pull up a different screen that's got this fun little wheel for us that we can spin to see who wins the raffle prize for today. Let's see who wins. Jacqueline! Woohoo! Congratulations, Jacqueline. I actually know I already have your address, so I will just make sure to send that gift card over to you. We also have a survey available. And so this will let me know, did you like this training? What other lunch and learns would you like to see us do in the future? I'll be posting that link in the chat here shortly. And I encourage you to connect with us again. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss upcoming courses. Like us on all the different social media channels, so that way you can stay up to date with what we are up to.